This is just some of the AI coding assistants that I tested. I'm running out of room for all of them. But on top of that, I've also tested 5 models across as many of these as I can. Sonnet 4 being the most widely available one. So let's jump into this, and then along the way, we're going to have a conversation about some of the weird things that happened. And I know there's going to be a lot of questions and controversy about some of the scores as we get further on. Of course, this is the thing that I really want to make sure people understand. When I am scoring this, what I am really testing is really long running spec following, instruction following. Are they good at calling tools? Are they able to go and complete something if you give it very specifically what it needs to do? And the way I do that is through a series of static code analysis, unit tests. I also use LLM as a judge. LLM as a judge is kind of a variable, right? Because I have tuned those to be as close and as similar as possible, but it is a non-deterministic nature. It does have a smaller weight in the overall final score, and I do run that multiple times to kind of average the result. But what you will see is a lower score from an LLM as a judge is very consistent, but it might change by 3 to 5%. I try to keep that as low as possible in all my prompts. But it is important to understand you may actually see something on here that has a high score, but you don't enjoy working with it for whatever reason. It could be slow. It might not have vision capabilities. Vision capability is actually kind of important to me. A couple notes. Prompting matters a ton. What I found is Gemini 2.5 Pro is kind of lazy, as is O3. And a lot of it's the harness because there are some AI coding assistants that will do well. Like you give it the same prompt as I give Sonnet, and it'll go all the way through and complete the task completely. But I've actually tuned it some to actually make Gemini 2.5 Pro be a little less lazy, and O3 to be a little less lazy, and GPT 4.1 for that fact. The harness also matters a lot. You will see that because you will see scores of 0 where they just literally it fails, whether it's an infinite loop like I get in some places, or it's maybe that just errors out. Like it'll actually say, hey, I just don't know what to do, or it just cuts off. Number of things. I have tons of images saved away. I won't cover those because this video is going to already be long enough. But what I've found more than anything is the model matters most. Sonnet 4, everybody has tuned to that. And the scores are starting to converge because everyone is catching up with one another. So it's making it harder to find who's actually winning or better in coding, especially for Sonnet 4. But the other models I think are a bit more interesting that I'll be running. Again, the way that I do this is a test that I retired. I just want to make sure it's very clear. I create an entire spec and I tell it to create the thing for me. I do this across different languages. I also do this with existing code bases where it needs to implement something. I do this by myself building out a solution and then making sure that the unit tests pass 100%. Then I build a prompt and I keep tuning that prompt until I get it to a point where it's stable enough where I can get consistent scores over and over again. And I really make sure like what's in the prompt is what's being tested with static code analysis, unit testing. I even do linting checks, things like that. I have a quick grader process that actually loads the application to make sure it actually loads without any errors. That counts as part of the scoring as well. And then we use LLM as a judge on top of it. So, jumping into it, the models that we're using, Claude 4 Sonnet. I've been asked a ton about O3. Honestly, I was very skeptical about running O3, but I'm glad I did because there's some very interesting results I'm excited to talk about. Same with 2.5 Pro, Qwen 3 Coder, and Kimi K2. Now, to be very transparent, I do not think I'm going to be running Kimi K2 again. The providers are just too unstable, and it becomes very hard. And a lot of these AI coding systems don't even have that available. And when I do try to bring it in, it just doesn't work at all. So let's jump into Claude 4. In third place, it is RooCode with a score of 26,014. You're going to see how converged these scores are. 26,214 for Klein. Like basically margin of error difference. Like this is basically a tie if you really think about that. If I were to run them another 10 times, the scores could be reversed. It's like very, very minor percentage difference there. But then you have GitHub Copilot, who wins, which is nuts to me. Not by much, but by enough, by a measurable amount. Would you actually notice it on a daily basis? I don't think so. I doubt it. But it's still surprising to me. GitHub Copilot, and I said this last month too, they have really made the thing solid now. I am impressed with the turnaround there because there for a while the thing was garbage. So overall, I've actually tried to color this so it doesn't flashbang you, so hopefully this is easy enough to read. But you can see how all the scores have kind of converged around this 25 to 26,000 point. You have Ader at the bottom and Zed at the bottom, which kind of surprised me because Zed just burns tokens like crazy, but it still scores lower. It's kind of bizarre to me. Augment Code is also on the bottom side of this, and a new version, a new one that I actually ran with Factory AI, which is an interesting one because it like syncs to your local desktop, and you actually put the job in the web, and you have it kind of work on your local desktop from you from the web. I'm very new to it. I may have not set that up correctly, but it scored, what I would expect with a decent AI coding assistant. And we had Trey, who did very well, and Amp Code. I've heard a lot of people talk about Amp Code being exceptional. And to be fair, you probably wouldn't see much of a difference between any of these. Like I think I did the math on this. It's like a 7% difference from the top of these. It's like less than 2 or 3% difference between some of these here. Like they really have converged on each other. For example, the Klein family, RooCode, Kilo, and Klein, they're all basically identical. What's surprising to me though is Claude Code is not number one. It has been surpassed, which blows my mind a little bit. But I do think some stuff has changed there, and I don't know exactly what, but it has actually dropped at least in ranking. So still up there pretty high. It's right in the Klein family of things. Still very good. Now O3 is an interesting model. Cursor of all things lands number 3 at 21,000. Now remember the baseline here. 26,574 is like the top of the Sonnet 4 version. And then we've got O3 at 21,126 for number 3. Ader. Now, when I saw this, I started realizing, because Ader is not so much of like an agentic harness like the other ones. It kind of, I haven't dug into the code of it, but it seems to like prep all the code that needs to be done and then writes it in individual files. So I feel like this is probably like purpose built for O3, and the cost is so low. I really would like to figure out a way to get the cost as part of this, but it's so time consuming to get these things ran and to get that cost accurate when I'm running it over and over and over and over again. So I am working on that, but Ader's cost is significantly lower than most of the other ones that you're paying for API cost on. Now, who do you think's number one? This probably will surprise you. Windsurf. Whatever they've done, they have tuned it incredibly well with O3. And I was surprised because Windsurf did awful with Gemini 2.5 Pro. So that just kind of shows me that the harnessing and the way that they're actually controlling these models matters a lot. But I did not expect Ader to be number 2. I did not expect Windsurf and Cursor to be 1 and 3. But it does make me realize that when I talk to people and they're like, oh, I love O3 as a coding model, I wonder if they're using it in Windsurf and Cursor. Because if you look at the overall score, Warp.dev did a decent job, actually. It actually completed the evals. RooCode failed. Klein failed. Kilo failed. OpenCode failed. Zed failed. Zed was the oddest. It just would do some thought process and just quit. OpenCode would do kind of the same things. It would end up just going for a little bit and then dying. Kilo, Klein, and RooCode, I could get it running a little bit and then it would fail. Very similar failure across both of them. A little bit unfortunate. So this model is probably very good at coding, but not really good at driving agents. And I don't know if I will test this again in the future unless there's a lot of interest for it, or if another AI coding tool comes out that makes it seem like it can control O3 even better. Qwen 3 Coder, though, this one I was very excited about. And I've been using it in RooCode a lot, and it scored 25,898 in RooCode. That is up there with Claude 4 Sonnet with the new tests and everything that I have in there. It is insanely good. Now, I am using Alibaba's API directly. That is the best one. If you use a different provider or use a different endpoint, like an FP4 and FP8 quantized version, you will probably get a worse experience. But this thing works so good. And this is one of the reasons why I think model selectors are so important. I think we need to be able to have things like this where we can load them into RooCode or load them into Tray. Freaking Tray! 214. I mean, basically it's similar here, but Tray's an amazing agent, and it scored very well here. And number one, this also still blows my mind, and it may blow your mind too. Because I put all the scores in a spreadsheet, I don't really pay attention to the final score until I get to the end and I sort it. And when I saw this, I was like, I guess it makes sense, but it's Qwen Code, and not by a small margin. It's kind of a small margin, but by several hundred points here. Qwen Code works really good. Now, there's a little bit of a caveat here because with Qwen Code, I did authenticate directly to Alibaba, and I'm pretty sure that it uses the 1 million context limit, a Qwen 3 coder. Whereas in the RooCode one and the Tray one, I was connected through OpenRouter, which I think is using the one that's like, what is it, 262 or whatever context. Qwen Code did a great job at the evals. Up there with Claude 4 Sonnet and all the other ones. Now, this is all of the scores here. We've got Qwen Code at the top. And if you look down here at the bottom, OpenCode did complete some of the evals well enough to actually get a score. Copilot, I could not get working. Aider actually did decent enough. It got 20,000 points. Kilo, Klein, and RooCode, all very, very similar. Kilo fell behind more than I thought because it had actually been, right in the mix with everyone, but it's down enough to where it's like beyond margin of error difference. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It could be just the update of Kilo, trying to keep up with RooCode and Klein being slightly, maybe they've done something with that model. Because like RooCode and Klein is basically identical, honestly. Either one of those could have been number 3. And Windsurf did a great job with this model as well. Absolutely crushed the evals. All of these are 24,000 more. It feels like a Claude 4 Sonnet model. It's insane. Now, Kimi K2 is a tough one because the providers for this thing are all over the board. I attempted to use Grok when it was available, and then I used the Moonshot AI one if Grok wasn't available. And what I mean by that is Grok kept going down or would rate limit me for whatever reason. But I did stabilize it as much as I could to actually be able to test this. This model's tough. We really do need like a very stable provider that I can use, and we need all of the AI coding assistants if we actually want to use this model to actually implement it so it's easy to use. But Tray did a great job, 24,000. That is up in the 24,000 mark, so it's incredibly good. With number 2, Klein did awesome at 25,610. And then RooCode, basically identical. I mean, these scores are pretty similar here. A couple hundred points difference. And again, if you were to run this, because of some of the variance with the providers, these scores could flop back and forth, in any number of ways. Kilo scored significantly less here, and this also kind of confuses me a bit because it seems like that Kilo did worse in Qwen 3 Coder and in Kimi K2 than the other 2 Klein-based ones. And again, this might just be an update type thing. Maybe it's like fallen behind a little bit on some of the prompt stuff. I'm not totally sure. It could be the to-do list stuff that's kind of rolled out into RooCode helping it. Who knows? Eider kind of worked, but very poorly. I would not use it in Eider in any way. And then that one I did actually use the Grok one. Copilot, I couldn't get it to work at all. Open Code, I couldn't get it to work at all. Windsurf, I couldn't get it to work at all. And so in this particular case, I think your best bet is going to be using like a RooCode, Klein, Kilo, Tray type thing, because all 4 of those I think are pretty solid with Kimi K2. As long as you hit a good provider, which to me is Grok or the Moonshot AI one directly, which the Moonshot AI one is very, very slow, unfortunately. Now, Gemini 2.5 Pro. This one is tough because there was a while when this was my favorite coding model and it wasn't even close. But this model also needs a lot of specialized prompting. The scores are just going to be lower than Claude 4 Sonnet, unfortunately. So we have RooCode at 19,516 in third place. Very happy with that. GitHub Copilot does an incredible job with it. Significantly better than RooCode at 20,380. And then Aider, number 1. Now, when I first started testing like Aider, I didn't think it was going to actually make the charts, and it makes me kind of realize that these big reasoning models that aren't always the greatest at tool calls work better in Aider, and significantly better. Like, it's not even just a couple hundred points; it's like 1,300 points better. So when I hear people say things like O3 is the best coding model or 2.5 Pro is the best coding model, Aider is probably a good representation of that because it's not driving an agent as much. It does a little bit, but it's just a different workflow that I think works well with these. Now let's take a look at all of these here. You can see here, Kilo and RooCode and Gemini CLI and Qwen are all basically identical. They're very, very close. And honestly, you could have put Kilo at number 3. It's like, 20 points different from RooCode. So basically identical. But Gemini CLI, now that has come a long way. I would say before it was kind of unusable. Now it is in the same ballpark as using Gemini 2.5 Pro in RooCode, and you probably wouldn't tell a difference. Qwen fell down a little bit, but honestly, it's, that could be runtime variance there. We've got Cursor and Trey both doing reasonably well. And then we have Open Code actually did complete everything with Gemini 2.5 Pro. But I will say, this is with their latest update. There was a while, I would say a couple weeks ago, it didn't work at all. So they've made massive strides on getting Open Code to actually be able to make a ranking here. And Warp.dev actually was able to complete. Windsurf surprises me. But I would just keep getting infinite loops where it would just keep saying the same phrases over and over again. I could get an eval to finish, and then I'd run my next one and it would fail. I'd run that, try it again, and it would fail. So I gave that one a 0 because it had too many failures. Zed and Void had very similar problems. The harnesses, whatever they're doing with Gemini 2.5 Pro, it just doesn't work good, whether it's temperature config that they've got in there, or if it's just the prompting that they've got. I'm pretty sure Open Code is actually building custom prompting for Gemini 2.5 Pro and custom config for it. So I think that's why they're actually starting to do well there. Now the next one, you get a little bit of a flashbang because I wanted to color it very clearly. But I've tried to dim it some, but it is going to be bright. So you can kind of see here the colors. Orange is Sonnet 4, purple is Qwen 3 Coder, green is Kimi K2. I actually have an entry for red, which is the GLM 4.5 model. Black is O3, and the blue is Gemini 2.5 Pro. You can still see Sonnet's the king. They've got the most in the top up there. But Qwen 3 Coder has put a dent in that. It's actually trickled in throughout all of that. And Qwen Code is... Honestly, the scoring makes me actually want to go and actually try this out, for a couple days or something, see if it's just that enjoyable to work with in Qwen Code as it's been running through the evals. But again, this is only one dimension of testing. Sonnet 4 has vision capabilities. It has really good prompt caching, and I can keep the cost lower if I'm using the API. Qwen 3 Coder, when I use it in my code base, I don't feel like the prompt caching is actually working in OpenRouter, so I have to keep the context limit small. Otherwise, the price gets racked up really quick. And I do not like that. I really hope that that gets fixed. And I'm using the Alibaba provider there, so I would assume that OpenRouter should be able to hook up caching there. It would make a big difference. Now, maybe in Qwen 3 Code, that would actually use caching because Alibaba Endpoint does support prompt caching. But I know in OpenRouter, and especially in RooCode, if it gets to a certain point, I can rack up too much price. It's just important to keep that in mind. Kimi K2, for example, has a limited context window. It's smaller than what Claude offers in Qwen 3 Coder. Sometimes context window matters. That's just important to know. And I will say that Qwen 3 Coder actually has a slightly bigger context window than Sonnet 4. There's just a lot of dimensions to all this stuff. I will also say I have found that Qwen 3 Coder will actually be a little bit tool call happy at times, and you kind of have to prompt it just a little bit differently if you're using it in your normal code base. And I've found that Sonnet 4 is starting to take more shortcuts. I feel like I have to prompt it specifically to not take shortcuts. Just each of these models have their own little quirks to them, and you may like or not like that based on the behavior that they have. But at the end of the day, I'll say I'm very happy I actually ran through this test. So Claude Code, not number 1 this month. I think it actually was number 8. It's still very good, at least from an eval perspective. I'm still using it a ton personally. I've just found that I have to talk to it differently. There's definitely something that has changed with its behavior, and I think it's probably some model update that has happened because I see it even in RooCode and others. Zed, you have to be careful with, because I can let that run and it will run until it basically runs out of the number of tool calls that it allows you to do. You continue, it'll do it again. Zed will just go on forever. And it's just something to be aware of if you're using Zed. I do like Zed a lot, but I found that the evals literally would take 2 to 3 times longer in Zed to run, just simply because it just kept doing so much. There were lots of surprises this month. In my mind, Qwen 3 Code was a big surprise. O3 Gemini 2.5 and Aider was a big surprise. And again, this is measuring like one dimension, so I'll be very curious to see what everyone's feedback is on this. So let's talk about what I'll be using in August. For number 3, Open Code, I really like what the team at Open Code's doing. It's new. There are times that it's kind of wonky, but they're making fast improvements. And I really like how easy it is for me to load up new models, drop in that open code config, and be able to put in some provider that I want. I really like just the simplicity of that. Now, RooCode has done some massive, massive updates, and it's come back on my board now. RooCode has just been something that I've just been a fan of because it's really like an advanced mode of Cline. And I definitely am a tinkerer. They've got custom slash commands now, which are just freaking awesome. They've got background editing, which is also freaking awesome. It's so easy to configure different modes. They've got the marketplace for modes now. So many cool things. The to-do list has actually been great, and I think that really does help guide the models a lot. I really like RooCode, and I am just going to continue using that probably forever because I've just got such a cool config built in there. And it works great with Qwen 3 Coder. And Claude Code, I'm paying the $100 a month currently. It does not make sense for me to go and pay a ton of other API costs to use Sonnet somewhere else. Claude Code is great. They're making constant updates as well. They have the new sub-agent thing, which I've been playing around with. I actually really like that as well. And they're just constantly rolling out new features. You can actually now set different models on each sub-agent. So very, very cool. But I do want to call some honorable mentions out. If you watch my recent video on Charm Crush, that thing is freaking awesome. I need to if they get a few of the little like user things kind of ironed out, that thing's going to be great. I'm excited to follow that. I'll see how it kind of evolves in the month of August. Augment is so good. Its context of the codebase has seemed to decay some because I used to be able to actually ask it questions, and I'm getting what I would say is not so good answers. And I don't know if that is Claude 4 and some of the changes with it, or if it's something with Augment, but it's still really good. It's a great agent. I'm actually a big fan of it, and I'm so excited to try their CLI. But I have moved it to just an honorable mention because I'm a big fan of Augment and what the Augment team is doing. But from a coding perspective, I've actually found that other agents are just slightly better. And I also want to mention AMP. There's so much hype around AMP on X right now, and it scored well in the evals. It wasn't top of the charts in any way, but it scored with all the other Claude 4 Sonnet ones. But they are taking a different approach, which is almost like the Apple of AI coding assistants. Super simple, very little options, no model selector, but they also do have the CLI, which I really appreciate. And I don't know. I actually have debated like giving an entire week to AMP just to see how it actually works. I have probably burnt some amount of money, probably $20 or $30 actually coding in my code base with AMP at this point. And I thought it was okay. I used it as a second pair of eyes on something I was having trouble with, and it didn't find it, but it was good enough. It navigated things well, it had good ideas, but it wasn't like mind blowing to me. But I really do want to understand why there's so much hype around AMP, because there's a lot of people talk about the magic there. So I'm debating giving that a try. Now, that is going to wrap it up. This video has gone on a long time. Let me know in the comments below, which of these things are you just surprised about? And if you wouldn't mind considering liking and subscribing, that would mean the world to me. Till next time, everyone. Peace out.